This is Kick-Ass News. I'm Ben Mathis. It's every couple's nightmare. Your spouse and you hit a rough patch, so you decide to go see a therapist. But what if that therapist doesn't have your best interests at heart? Or worse, what if that therapist is a psychopath hell-bent on breaking up your marriage and doing you physical harm? That's the plot of a new movie starring Alicia Silverstone and Rob Corddry called Bad Therapy. And today they come on the show to talk about the film that comes out on video on demand April 17th. Alicia shares memories from Clueless, the film that launched her career as a comedic actress, and stories from working with playwright David Mamet and the late great Peter O'Toole. And Rob talks about his audition for The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, some of the low-budget, fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants field pieces that he did in the early days of that show, and why he doesn't mind when he often gets cast as creepy assholes and pedophiles. Plus, they talk about the real story that inspired Bad Therapy, the potential pitfalls of entrusting your most important relationship to a total stranger, and what it's like for Rob to be the object of psychosexual desire. Coming up with Alicia Silverstone and Rob Corddry in just a moment. I'm talking with Alicia Silverstone, who stars along with Rob Corddry in the movie Bad Therapy. Alicia Silverstone, thanks for joining me. And how's shelter at home treating you these days?
Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to talk to you. I'm doing really well. We're really lucky that my son and I are so healthy and doing well. So, yeah.
How do you keep him busy at home all these days?
We do all kinds of things. I don't know how there's enough. I feel like there's not enough time in the day because
Really?
I'm a mother and because I work. So,
Sure.
but there's, we are going on hikes. We're doing exercising together. We're dancing. We're jump roping. We're trampolining. We're cooking together. We're,
Wow.
taking baths together and talking about, doing math problems in the bathtub, and all kinds of things. So then we play cards and board games, and I feel like there's not enough hours in the day.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like you're keeping him pretty busy. You're doing a good job
Yeah.
there. Congrats.
Thanks.
And I have to ask you about something because you have dedicated almost as much of your life to animal rights as you have to acting, maybe even more. I have to ask, have you watched Tiger King yet?
I haven't. Yeah, I don't know, honestly, anything about Tiger King. I saw a few things about it on my Instagram feed, but I'm so kind of preoccupied thinking about the virus and how to help people like build their immune systems, take this opportunity to be as healthy as you possibly can, and make ourselves more resilient so we're able to fend off these diseases. So my focus has been a little bit off, but I would love to know more about it. What should I know?
I don't think that you would enjoy it. It exposes some pretty terrible conditions that they keep these big cats in. But then it's also the question of is it a good or a bad thing for the animal rights movement because it exposes that sort of thing, but it's also sort of making a celebrity out of this crazy guy, Joe Exotic.
I don't know anything about that, but if he's keeping animals in circus or sort of zoo conditions, he's not doing good by my book.
Yeah, not even zoo conditions, but janky ass like middle of nowhere zoo conditions where they're feeding animals expired Walmart meat and stuff. Pretty bad. But, it's fun to have you on because Clueless was sort of a milestone in my life. I'm probably for many people, it was kind of a seminal movie of the 90s, but particularly for me, It was the first movie premiere that I ever went to. I was brand new
Oh,
at USC Film School, interning at Warner Brothers. My boss gives me an invitation. And here I'm thinking, you know, Grauman's Chinese, red carpet, arc lights, and all that stuff. And the premiere is a beach party at Malibu, and no
you
one's
were
wearing shoes. I'm
there. That's so
overdressed.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but to this day, I still think that it's probably the funnest premiere that I ever went to. Wasn't that a great party?
It was. It was such a party. I remember I brought my dog,
Hmm.
and it was just wild. It was so, it was wild.
Gosh. Yeah. How old were you when you made Clueless?
I think I was 17 and I turned 18 while we were shooting.
Now,
Yeah.
you have this big reputation as a comedic actress now, but had you ever done a comedy before you made that movie?
No, my first film was The Crush.
Right.
And then after The Crush, it was Hideaway with, like I did Hideaway with Jeff Goldblum.
Hmm.
That was like a scary movie. I did The Babysitter,
Right.
which was like a Joel Schumacher produced film. And it was, that was also scary. And what else did I do? I did like some Raquel Welch television film and a movie called True Crime that was so a bunch. Everything I did prior to Clueless was all. Oh, I did a film in France with James Gandolfini called
Oh, yeah.
Le Nouveau Monde,
Yeah.
and yeah. So by the time I got, and I did this really weird movie with Ralph Bakshi, and that was, goodness gracious.
But none of them comedies, huh? They
No,
were all
not
serious
one
films,
comedy.
right?
Very serious stuff.
Yeah.
And then Clueless was my first
Yeah.
comedy. Yeah.
Well, what better director to break you into comedy than Amy Heckerling? I mean,
I
it's hard to do better
know.
than that.
She's wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess your first break was what? The Crush? That
The
was
Crush.
the first big break?
That
Yeah.
was the first film I did, and I got 2 MTV Movie Awards for
Right.
it, and that was my first film.
Yeah. And I remember at the time, the media was calling you the next big sex symbol, but I mean, you were probably like, what, 15 or 16? Wasn't it awkward that people were objectifying you like that at such a young age?
I was 16 when The Crush came out, because I turned 16 while we were making it. And yeah, growing up under those kinds of circumstances was not easy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where was the Aerosmith video and all this? That was after The
So-
Crush, but before Clueless, is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
After The Crush, I think the first one I did was after the movie I did The Babysitter, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then, or maybe even, no, I don't know. But all of it was I did 3 Aerosmith videos, and they were
Right.
all, peppered in amongst the films I was making, before Clueless. Yeah.
That one video was voted by MTV the all-time #1 music video.
It
Yeah.
was.
That's wild. I mean, do they even make music videos anymore? I can't remember when I saw a music video last.
I don't
It's so
know.
weird.
I did one. I did a music video for this wonderful artist, and you don't even recognize me because I'm wearing a black wig, and
Oh,
no
yeah?
one even knew it was me at all. And but I didn't even know where it was being shown.
Yeah, because MTV doesn't even do them anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess online, YouTube and that kind of thing. Yeah, but it's just weird. I can't think of the last music video I saw. But, growing up in the 80s and 90s,
They were
music videos
huge.
were huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah. By the way, I also want to tell you here that I caught you in the Mamet play, Speed the Plow, a little while back at the Geffen. You were just terrific
Oh.
in that show.
Thank you. I'm so glad you saw that. I love doing theater so much.
And I've had David on the show before. Such a great guy, so smart. But I
Oh
kind
my
of feel
God.
like he knows the worlds that he writes about, if you know what I mean. He's probably known a few tough guys in his day.
He's so talented and so
Yeah.
brilliant. I'm lucky enough to have worked with him twice.
Yeah.
I did another play with him before that called Boston Marriage, and it was just, I got to play a little Scottish maid. It was so wonderful.
Is he a pretty intense person to work with?
He was wonderful to work with. One of my
Really?
favorite directors I've ever worked with. He's so crystal clear. He has such a vision. And if you do all your work and really come fully prepared, like fully filled up, you've done all your work, and you just let it all go when he's there in the room, and you just fly. He gave me the most specific direction that he wouldn't say anything to me, about anything, about acting very much.
Oh, yeah.
And then he might say, on that line, step down stage, on that one line, And you'd think that doesn't sound very like uh, a deep note, but when you step down on that line, it was like, oh, like it changed everything for me. He was so brilliant and so specific with such rant. If I told you the notes he gave me for this play, you would just be like, what? Like one of the notes he said was, every time you come in the room, you're bringing good news. And my character was always bringing bad news. So it was so funny when he said that, because it changed everything. I thought that I was bringing really good news, but it was the worst. I was saying the house is on fire. But and then he said, every time you leave and enter the room, I'd like you to curtsy. And that's all he said, but it turned into this enormous character in the play for me. I just started to really dive into that. And then one other thing he said to me was, I wasn't allowed to look at anyone. I couldn't look at any actor on stage. I was only allowed to look straight out into the audience, because I was playing a slave. I was playing a housekeeper to these women in this play called Boston Marriage. And anyway, this added an element that was, that's all that I can tell you, that in the 3 months I spent with him, that's all he really said to me in terms of direction. But it was so profound. And even with the costumes, he would just say, can you adjust this thing like 1 inch over? And yeah, he's so smart. And he's just, I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it's funny because, his dialogue is so intense and it kind of hits you over the head with words. But it's interesting that he's so subtle as a director. He really gets the little tweaks that change everything.
He does. He's incredible. I would die to work with him again. I loved him so much.
And now I also saw that you worked with Peter O'Toole, and I've been on kind of a Peter O'Toole kick lately. I was looking over his filmography the other night because I was watching My Favorite Year, and I saw that your filmographies overlap. You did a movie together. What was he like?
We did. Peter O'Toole and I were dear, dear friends. I was friends with him all the way up until when he passed, and he and I had such a lovely relationship. He's such a wonderful. First of all, I got to act with him, which is incredible, right?
Yeah.
And but he and I became buddies. We stayed in.
Really?
He and I were the only ones who stayed in this one hotel together. So he and I were like kind of roommates. He lived right down the hall from me. His door was one door, and then mine was the other door. So we just saw it. Not roommates, obviously, but we saw each other a lot and cared for each other a lot. And he took me to jazz clubs, and
really,
he was just a lover, just such a sweet, loving man. And then we became friends. I would go see him in England, and he would come see me. I'd see him in LA when he'd come to LA, and he's a good man.
Yeah, he's a guy who probably has some stories. He lived a pretty wild life for a while there, like most British actors of that generation.
I know. I wish I could have. I just enjoyed him in the moment. I wish I had been more thoughtful to ask him about all his stories. But
now, your parents are British, is that right?
Yes, very much so.
Did you have much of a British influence growing up? Because you grew up here. They lived here, I think, in Northern California, right?
Yes, my mom and dad were both English. They met in Florida, and then they moved to San Francisco together, and then they had me. Well, they had my brother, and then they had me. And my brother and I are the first generation Americans in our family. And but we have English blood, we have English passport, and we went to England all the time. So there's a lot of English in me. My mom, who has passed, sadly, she is very much in me. Yeah, I mean, I was very much raised as a little English girl.
Well, let's talk about this movie you have coming out, Bad Therapy. I'm assuming just because, you're very into self-care and health and you have a wellness line and all that, that you must be pro-therapy. Are you a big believer in therapy in general? I
think finding an amazing therapist is the key. And bad therapy is an example of when you found the wrong one.
Yeah.
Because in real life, too, I think if you find someone incredible, it is life-changing. This is a person that I think everyone should go to therapy, really, because it's just such an if you've had really solid, good parents who just, I still think probably somebody needs some therapy, but I don't know.
Hmm.
It just seems like, why not go work it all out?
Sure.
And what it can do for your life is incredible.
Sure.
And but
Unless
when you
they
go to
turn
the
out to be a
wrong one, that's
sociopath.
not good.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that there's mild versions of that. This film is a black comedy.
Yeah.
Taking something extrapolate. I mean, my understanding is that it's based on true story. So there was, but there are therapists out there who are just not quite that great, and you can waste a lot of time and money and not really get very far.
Right.
But the ones that are great are amazing. But in bad therapy, yes, what's so fun about it is that this is these people, innocently put their trust in the hands of this therapist, and it's this married couple, the Howards, who's played by Rob Corddry and myself, and I'm, play his wife. And we go to see a therapist, and that's played by Michaela Watkins, and both
Yeah.
of these guys are
Right.
wonderful actors. And then we go down the rabbit hole of marital therapy, and quite quickly, she turns out to be extremely manipulative and messes up our marriage, really. And all of our trust is challenged, and we ultimately fall back in love, and are closer as a family as a result of it. But in the process, my character practically loses her mind. She
Hmm.
pulls a knife on her husband.
Well, yeah, you don't need a therapist to drive you to that, I imagine. But
No, but they were
if you,
doing so well when they began. Like, that's
yeah.
what I think so funny is you have these two people in the beginning of the movie who really love each other
Hmm.
and are quite like they're attracted to each other. They love each other. They have an active sex life. They're really interested in each other, and they just go and start unraveling, and this normal woman starts going crazy. My character, she just starts to go really, get so upset and so confused and so riled up, and it's very funny.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you think it's a true story because I was wondering about that because the film has a prologue, at the end where they say Judy Small, I think, I don't know, did 3 years in prison and I don't know, you guys live in the Bay Area or something like that and have 3 kids and all that. But then I also saw in the notes that it was based on a novel, so I wasn't sure.
It's based on a novel written by the director's wife,
Oh,
Nancy,
really?
and
Oh,
she's a very accomplished writer. And I don't know how much is true or not true about the story, but I know that they definitely had an experience with a therapist that probably was less than ideal.
wow. So
Yeah.
okay, so the author and the director are married, and this is based on a situation that they had with their marriage,
Yes.
huh? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
But what ends up happening, I don't know about,
Uh,
how much it is true. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of that's her imagination, but
yeah.
you'd have to ask her.
Well, folks, definitely go see Bad Therapy and Alicia Silverstone. It's been fun. Thanks for talking with me.
Thank you so much. Lovely to talk with you.
We're going to take a quick break, and then I'll be back with more when we come back in just a minute. Folks, Rob Corddry from The Daily Show, HBO's Ballers, and Children's Hospital on Adult Swim, as well as movies like Hot Tub Time Machine, Old School, The Heartbreak Kid, and What Happens in Vegas. Now he stars alongside Alicia Silverstone in Bad Therapy, which comes out April 17th. Rob Corddry, welcome.
Let's kick some ass.
Can you do that with social distancing anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, man. Well, basically, I just wake up every day, and what I do is I take the day and I get it in like a classic Greco-Roman wrestling hold. Like I get its arm behind its back,
Nice.
and then I whisper in its ear like I could snap your arm at any time today. And so then the today knows it's my bitch. And
How are you surviving quarantine? Are you in New York or LA, Rob?
I'm in LA.
Oh, you are? Okay. See, now,
Yeah.
isn't it weird? I'm in LA, you're in LA, and we're doing this remotely over the internet. It's the end of the live interview, I guess.
I wonder. I'm sure a lot of things will go back to normal, but there will be certain things that people discover, can just be done this way. Like I don't know. I'm hoping for that, and I'm afraid of it at the same time.
Yeah, I'll tell you the guys I feel sorry for. Guys like Stephen Colbert and all these late night hosts right now
Uh,
who have to put together a full episode every night from home and somehow make it funny and entertaining. I mean, the novelty of seeing a celebrity in their natural environment only goes so far. I mean, that's got to be a lot of pressure. I think Colbert was did 2 minutes of feeding his dog ham the other night.
oh my god. Yeah, those guys are working their asses off. I don't envy them at all.
Yeah. Now, like a lot of people, I first got introduced to you on late night when you were a correspondent on The Daily Show in the early 2000s. Was that show pretty much your first break?
Yeah, I would say so. That was my first I'd say it was definitely my I had done a bunch of commercials before that, stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think I was in one movie before.
And prior to that, you earned your chops at UCB, right?
That's right.
Who else came up with you in your UCB class?
Oh, it's funny because I just, did a big group Zoom with a bunch of them last night.
Oh, yeah?
Husky, Paul Scheer, Rob Hubel, Seth
Oh, wow.
Morris, Jack McBrayer, God, who else was there? Nick Kroll was a little bit after us, but,
Wow. Great
uh,
group.
Rob Riggle, uh,
Oh, yeah. Rob, love him. Had him on
really
the show a
great.
few times.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it was I always kinda joke, but I'm serious that this is the only thing in my life I've gotten in on the ground floor of, was the UCB theater, like, it's kind of like I was at CBGB's in 1975 to watch the birth of punk rock, in a way,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
my weird version of what that is, and it's the only time, like, I can say in my life, like, "Oh, nice theater. When I was young, we had to walk up 4 flights to a ballet studio."
What was it like getting back with all the gang on Zoom or whatever it was, or Skype the other day?
Well,
I mean, do you guys improv over Zoom?
we've been talking about it. I mean, basically, it's just that. It's all bits, and then it gets super
Mhm.
political, and then it goes back to bits, and then mostly just everybody tooling on Jack McBrayer.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Now, did you ever have a stand-up phase? Because I always talk to comedians who inevitably had an improv phase and improv comics who had a stand-up phase.
oh, that's funny. Um, yeah, no, I didn't professionally. I used to do a lot of college gigs when I was on The Daily Show,
Oh, yeah.
and I would do, like, 5 to 10 minutes of sort of local based joke stand-up, because I know the rhythms of it. I know how to pretend to look like a stand-up, but I have and I've considered it before. I've written down jokes and thought, "God, this would be so fun and funny," but, like, I have too much respect for that as an art form, I think, to, be one of those guys that's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, just because 'cause you're a celebrity and you've said a couple funny things, you're gonna bump some young upstart who's only thinking about doing this for the rest of his life, at the Comedy Cellar or something." So, like, I have too much respect for the work that they put into it, the dedication that goes along with being a stand-up.
Yeah.
It's intense. I mean, improv is
So
easy, I think, compared to it.
so you would develop local comedy every time you did, like, a college campus or something like that?
Well,
I mean, that's a lot of
no,
work.
I would kinda have it was like plug and play. Like, I'd
Yeah.
ask my,
Oh, okay.
my contacts, like, "Oh, who, who's the, what's the local pizza place?" Or,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, okay.
it was nothing, all that
Yeah.
special.
Yeah. Yeah. Dean Jeffries, what's with that guy?
Yeah, right? Exactly right.
Yeah. What was your first audition for The Daily Show like? Or I guess your only audition for The Daily Show?
Oh, it was awesome, actually. I had 2 auditions. The first one, I worked so hard on it, harder than I'd ever worked on an audition before because I knew I could do it, and I was obsessed with the show anyway, and I knew that I could do that. I got it. I just got the show, and so I really put work into it. Like, I took the script, put it up on the wall, but I would be talking to it as if it were the camera while I was reading it, as if it were a teleprompter, and, and I came up with a couple of jokes that weren't in the on the page, and I thought I had a really solid audition, and then after that, you gotta go into sit at the desk and do a desk piece with Jon as your sort of callback, you know? And that is terrifying and thrilling at the same time, like, because to make Jon Stewart laugh is I can't think of anything that tops it, you know?
Yeah, he's the master.
Yeah, so to see him having fun during a callback for a correspondent, immediately, like, charged me up a little bit, and I think, yeah, maybe put me over the edge, but, it was a fun process looking back on it.
Yeah, I'll
I'm
bet.
sure I was terrified at the time.
And I've had a number of former Daily Show correspondents on the show, including guys like Riggle and Ed Helms, who I think came on board around the same time as you. And one thing that they always say is that the field crews, especially in those early days, pretty much had a license to go rogue and do whatever the hell it took to get a laugh. It was sort of like the Wild West, where once you got out of the studio, you just never knew
Yeah.
what you were going to get.
Yeah.
And they all say that it was the most fun they ever had.
Very much so. I mean, it was definitely, you know, a more collaborative, experience than, say, like, the in studio bits that
Yeah.
the writers and Jon would largely write. This was just me and a producer, writing it out, coming up with questions, figuring out an angle, and then inevitably, and this is the fun part, inevitably you get there and the person says something that changes the whole entire story, and you could see it unfold before you. And just like in improv, like, you just lock down on that and you go for it. But, like, it was a very bare bones experience back then. Like, they had
Oh,
no
yeah.
money, and, I think both Ed Helms and I were stuck in Canada for days, just because we lied. They told us to lie to the border patrol people that
Really?
we were a news station or something. Um, and, yeah, and we only had one camera back then, which was really a drag. So
You're
we had to
kidding.
shoot the interview. They would put the camera on the interviewee, and then when I was done with the, 1.5, 2-hour interview where I asked them very uncomfortable questions, then we'd have to swing the camera around over their shoulder to get me just asking the questions. I just re-asked the questions again, and that's when you
You're
could see, like,
kidding.
the color drain from their face, like, "Oh god, what did I say to that?"
Yeah, those were the early days when The Daily Show wasn't so well established. And it's like there was that magical window when you could sit down to interview a guest, probably, they get a situation where they weren't in on the joke.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the I think the group right before me, which was, Carell, Vance DeGeneres, Colbert, uh, those
Hmm.
guys, because they literally would say we're a comedy, the news division of Comedy Central, or not even say Comedy Central, just they could just flat out lie. It got harder and
Yeah.
harder as we went on to to try and, like, sell the show as anything but exactly what it was.
Do you have a favorite interview that you did?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind, I guess, because 'cause I've been thinking about this a lot lately, I Dr. Tierno, Dr. Louis Tierno, Dr. something Tierno, he wrote a book called Germs, and we were just basically doing a piece, classic Daily Show setup premise, like, I think it was, voting. People say vote or die, but it's really more like vote and die, because voting booths are polluted and can kill you. And, he did a swab of the voting booth and found so much feces in there.
Oh my God,
And,
really?
oh, and he literally said the words, and this was why I think this is one of my favorite interviews. He literally said the words, and I still get, like, a flutter in my stomach today at my excitement way back then. He goes, "We as a species are literally bathing in human waste." And I was
Oh
like,
God.
"Oh my god, you're sent from heaven."
God. I wish that all the politicians or the courts in Wisconsin could have seen that before they went and had a public
Oh, that's
election
all
there.
we need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
God.
what was the impetus for you to leave The Daily Show after what, 4 or 5 years, I think?
Yeah, it's between 4 and 5 years, and wife and I always said, like, we would move to LA if work, dragged us there, and sure enough, like, it was the one and only thing I've ever auditioned for during pilot season. I booked it. It was Seth MacFarlane's first live action show called The Winner. Yeah,
Really?
and it was,
What
yeah,
was
pretty
that?
unfortunately named, like, if you wanna, like, lob a slow pitch into critics, call something The Winner. Um,
Yeah.
but it only lasted 6 episodes because this is kind of funny. It was basically I played a shut-in
Yeah.
that is just starting to open his doors, and he's, a 35-year-old shut-in whose best friend is a 14-year-old. And I think after a couple episodes, Fox was like, "Wait a minute, we greenlit a show about a pedophile. This is ho we can't do this."
Jesus. Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was my reason for leaving, and it
Uh,
lasted 6 weeks, and then I got to LA. I was in LA, and then there was a writer's strike, and I had no money and a new baby, and it was a great
yeah.
time.
Is pedophile your thing? Because didn't you get cast as a sex offender on Curb Your Enthusiasm once?
Yes, I will note, very good catch there, by the way. He would never specified that he was a pedophile.
Oh,
I
okay.
like to think of him, that character, as just, your typical old-fashioned, guy who exposes himself on the subway. That was my
Yeah.
internal backstory, at least. I was in New York once. I was leaving The Daily Show, and this cab screeches to a halt right in front of the door of The Daily Show, and the cabbie rolls down his window, and he points at me, and he goes, "Ha, ha, pervert."
Really?
He might have been talking about something else, but I just assume it was Curb.
Were you wearing a trench coat?
To be fair, I was wearing a trench coat with shorts, so I
Okay.
could see why he might.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well, you have since recovered from your Seth MacFarlane pedophile phase. You had Hot Tub Time Machine. You were on Curb, Children's Hospital, which I am a huge fan of. Absolutely love it. Of course,
Thank you.
Ballers. And now you've got this movie, Bad Therapy, coming out. Congratulations, by the way. You actually get to play a pretty good guy in this movie. I'm used to seeing you play the asshole
Well, he's
often.
a good guy. I know, right? It's not strictly a comedy either. That's what I like about this movie, is
Right.
that it's like
Yeah.
it definitely, crosses genres. It's a comedy, a relationship drama. It's also a thriller. Um, so that's what was really interesting to me about it. And yeah, he's like a quieter dude. He's kind of content with life, and you know,
Yeah, I think I heard once that you said that your manager once told you that you play creepy but accessible assholes.
that's right.
That's your your
That's right. Because
niche.
he goes, "Look, you got it made. You're the one thing you can do without trying is be inherently likable for some reason. So you could play the baddest guy in the world, and people will still like you." I was like, "Okay, I'll do that then." Oh, it's fun though, man. It's fun to to have free reign and actually get applauded for it, you
Now,
know?
what's the story on Bad Therapy? It's there's a therapist who
Yeah, that's
interferes with your
right.
marriage, right?
It's hard to sort of explain how we get into the therapist's office, like how we end up in therapy, because we both, Alicia's character and mine, have 2 totally different perspectives on that. Um, but we do end up there, and yeah, she ends up completely dismantling us, and that role is played by Michaela Watkins, who
Yeah,
plays
she's
my wife
great.
in The Unicorn, and she's awesome.
Yeah.
She brings a lot of the comedy to the movie. She's
Uh,
hilarious and so good.
Yeah. Now, you've been married for, I want to say, coming up on 20 years. Would you ever entrust your marriage to a therapist?
I don't know. I mean,
It's a lot of power to give over
uh,
to a
I don't
stranger,
know.
no
I
less.
have this inherent trust of therapists for some reason, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My friend once was in therapy, and he left his therapist, and I asked him why, and he was like, "Because I saw him driving his car, and he had, like, 14 bumper stickers on the back, and one of them was like, 'Coexist,'" and I was like, "Oh god." He was like, "I can't talk to them anymore." But, I don't know. My wife and I like work out our problems
Yeah.
after an uncomfortable few days.
And this therapist sort of becomes obsessed with you. What's it like to be the object of psychosexual desire, Rob?
Yeah, yeah. The object of psychosexual desire, but accessible.
Yes.
Um, yeah, what's not a bad thing to play, it's kind of funny, like, I sort of had trouble, I'm realizing now, wrapping my head around the reality.
Mhm.
Like, what kind of person would break up a marriage to be with me? Like, what? So she's gotta be
Don't sell
crazy.
yourself short.
No, but I mean, come on. I mean, look, I'm a bald man.
And I heard that this story is sort of inspired by the director and his wife's experience in therapy. That's pretty terrifying. Do you know the backstory there?
Yeah, he told me about as much as that, but he said well, she wasn't their therapist wasn't a psychopath, but I do think I don't think it was a great experience, and I
Yeah.
imagine that, like, they this is my version of it, because this might not be true, but, like, I imagine, like, a lot of people come out of therapy or come out of something like that better because you feel superior to the like, you feel like, "Well, that person's crazy. I'm doing fine." You know?
Yeah.
I that might have been I don't even know why I'm saying that. That might, he might have mentioned that to me or I'm making it up.
It's an interesting movie, and it's very LA because, you work in the industry and your wife is a realtor, and I kind of feel like those are the only two acceptable career paths in this town.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because that actually helps explain how we get into therapy, because it's a very
Mhm.
LA thing, and Alicia's character's feeling sort of, unmoored in her real estate business and not successful, and I don't wanna change anything about my life, I'm good. I'm static, and she decides she wants to do therapy because her best friend because it's the thing you do and the thing people with more money than us do and blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
So
no.
it would so
That is
she
LA.
got into it for the wrong reason, and then eventually I start getting into it for the wrong reasons.
Well, it was originally slated for a theatrical release,
Yeah.
but then, of course, now the theater's all closed up. So where can folks listening see Bad Therapy?
I think everywhere, right? I mean, pick a place.
Okay. Okay,
Name
all the
something.
streaming
I don't know.
options.
I think it's all the streaming that's video on demand, and all the streaming apps should have it. I'm sure, Apple TV got it, and
Terrific.
yeah. I wish it got a theatrical release, but whatever. Those days speaking of things that might be over, those days might be over completely,
Yeah, I'm gonna miss movie theaters.
you know?
I'm gonna miss the collective
I know.
experience. I certainly hope not.
Yeah.
Well, again, look for Rob in Bad Therapy coming out April 17th. Rob Corddry, thanks, man.
It was fun, man. Thank you.
Thanks again to Rob Corddry and Alicia Silverstone for coming on the show. See Bad Therapy now available on video on demand, and follow them on Twitter at Alicia Silv and at Rob Corddry. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and rate and review us while you're there. 5-star ratings and detailed reviews are one of the best ways for new listeners to discover the show. You can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at KickassNewsPod and recommend us to your friends on your social media. For more fun stuff, visit kickassnews.com, and I welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions at comments@kickassnews.com. For now, I'm Ben Mathis, and thanks for listening to Kick-Ass News.